was the richest and most powerful state of its age. Its legions had conquered kingdoms, its laws governed millions, and its influence stretched across almost the entire known Mediterranean world. To many Romans, their republic seemed invincible, but few knew that at the very heart of this mighty state, a conspiracy was taking shape. One designed to burn the city, murder its leaders, and overthrow the government. And the men behind this plot were not foreign enemies, but Rome's own citizens. Cicero versus Catiline, the conspiracy that shook Rome. The boy from Arpinum, Italy, 106 BCE. Far from the grand temples and marble monuments of Rome, in the small hill town of Arpinum, a child was born into a respectable but unremarkable household. His name was Marcus Tullius Cicero. Unlike many of the men who dominated Roman politics, Cicero did not belong to one of Rome's ancient noble families. His father was a wealthy member of the equestrian class, a landowner who had enough money to provide his sons with the finest education. For generations, the Tullii had lived comfortably, but they were outsiders in the ruthless world of Roman politics. Recognizing his son's brilliance, Cicero's father moved the family to Rome. There, young Cicero studied philosophy, law, literature, and rhetoric under some of the best teachers in the Roman world. While many young aristocrats sought glory through military service, Cicero sought power through words, and he was exceptionally good at it. By his 20s, he had become one of Rome's most famous advocates. Crowds gathered to hear him speak. Judges listened carefully. Clients desperately sought his services. Through talent alone, Cicero was climbing toward the highest offices of the Roman Republic. But elsewhere in Rome, another young man was preparing for the same prize. And unlike Cicero, he carried the weight and the prestige of centuries of noble ancestry. Around 108 BCE, Lucius Sergius Catiline, better known as Catiline, was born into one of Rome's oldest patrician families. The Sergii proudly claimed descent from Sergestus, a companion of Aeneas, the Trojan hero whom Romans believed was one of the founders of their civilization. For centuries, Catiline's ancestors had served as consuls, commanders, and magistrates. Their names filled the pages of Roman history. But by Catiline's time, the family's fortune had faded. The prestige remained. The money did not. Still, Catiline lived like an aristocrat. He entertained lavishly, maintained expensive connections, and pursued political advancement aggressively. He entered the traditional cursus honorum, the ladder of public offices every ambitious Roman hoped to climb. He served as quaestor, then as praetor. Later, he governed a province in Africa. Yet despite these successes, rumors constantly surrounded him. Ancient writers accused him of cruelty during the dictatorship of Sulla. Some even claimed he murdered rivals and members of his own family. Modern historians debate many of these accusations, suspecting that some were exaggerations spread by political enemies. But one thing nobody doubted was Catiline's ambition. He desperately wanted to become consul, the highest office in Rome, and he intended to obtain it at almost any cost. At first glance, Cicero and Catiline seemed destined to become enemies. One was a self-made outsider. The other belonged to an ancient aristocratic family. Yet politics in Rome was rarely straightforward. In fact, before the conspiracy became known, Cicero briefly considered cooperating with Catiline. In a private letter to his friend Atticus, Cicero suggested that Catiline might actually become a useful ally. At the time, both men were contesting elections. Both sought influence. Both wanted the consulship. neither knew how dramatically their relationship would change, because within a few years, one of them would stand in the Senate as the defender of the Republic, and the other would be accused of plotting its destruction. One would become famous for a speech, the other for a conspiracy, and their struggle would become one of the most dramatic political battles in Roman history. Catiline's desperate gamble. This incident offers a vivid illustration of just how varied political life in Rome in the 1st century BCE was. By 63 BCE, Catiline was in serious trouble. Despite his noble birth and political experience, he was drowning in debt. Roman elections were incredibly expensive. Candidates hosted feasts, sponsored games, distributed gifts, paid agents to canvass voters, and borrowed enormous sums of money to maintain public support. Catiline spent lavishly, much more lavishly than he could afford. Adding to his problems were the many scandals attached to his name. Ancient writers accused him of violence, corruption, and misconduct during his governorship in Africa. Because of these allegations, his candidacy for consul had already been delayed once. Still, Catiline remained determined. He ran for consul in 64 BCE and lost. He tried again in 63 BCE and lost again. Each defeat pushed him deeper into financial ruin, and perhaps deeper into desperation. But Catiline was not alone. Many Romans shared his frustrations. Former soldiers who had not received enough land, aristocrats burdened with debts, citizens angry at corrupt governors, men who believed the Republic served only a small, wealthy elite. Catiline promised them something radical: debt cancellation, political reform, a chance to start over, and thousands listened. For Cicero, politics was an uphill battle. Romans called men like him novus homo, a new man. No member of his family had ever become consul. Old aristocratic families considered him an outsider. Many nobles looked down upon him. But Cicero possessed advantages they could not ignore. He was brilliant, exceptionally hardworking, and perhaps the greatest speaker of his generation. For years, he cultivated friendships with influential senators. He defended powerful men in court. He won famous cases. People traveled simply to hear him argue. By 64 BCE, Cicero had become a political celebrity, and when Romans voted for their next consuls, Cicero emerged victorious. Marcus Tullius Cicero, a provincial outsider, had become consul of Rome, while Catiline once again suffered humiliating defeat. To many observers, that should have been the end of the story. Instead, it was only the beginning. Soon after taking office, Cicero began receiving alarming information. A woman named Fulvia approached him. Fulvia was involved with Quintus Curius, a supporter of Catiline. Curius, eager to impress his lover, revealed secret discussions taking place among Catiline's associates. According to Fulvia, plans were being made for violence. Debt records would be destroyed. Important politicians would be assassinated. Rome itself might even be burned. At first, these stories sounded unbelievable, but gradually more evidence appeared. Meetings had reportedly taken place in private houses. Supporters were gathering weapons. Messages were being exchanged. Then came an assassination attempt. Thanks to warnings from Fulvia, Cicero fortified his residence. And on the night of November 7th, armed men who allegedly intended to kill him found themselves unable to enter. Enough was enough. On November 8th, Cicero summoned the Senate. The Senate was not a parliament elected by ordinary people. It was a council made up of former magistrates and influential statesmen who advised magistrates and controlled much of Rome's political life. 1 month earlier, in October, senators had passed an emergency decree, the Senatus Consultum Ultimum. It effectively ordered the consuls to ensure that the Republic suffered no harm, something similar to emergency powers in modern states. Inside the Temple of Jupiter Stator, senators gathered, and unexpectedly, Catiline himself walked into the chamber. Cicero rose and delivered one of history's most famous speeches. "How long, Catiline, will you abuse our patience?" He described secret meetings, named participants, mentioned houses where conspirators gathered, spoke about assassination plans, and accused Catiline of preparing rebellion. Catiline denied everything. He begged senators not to trust Cicero. He claimed he was being targeted because of political prejudice, but hardly anyone believed him. Surrounded by hostile faces, Catiline realized his position was hopeless. That very night, he left Rome. Catiline traveled north and joined supporters who had assembled an army in Etruria. His followers included veterans of Sulla, bankrupt nobles, poor farmers, and men who felt abandoned by the Republic. Meanwhile, Cicero continued hunting conspirators still inside Rome. An unexpected breakthrough soon arrived. The Allobroges, a Gallic tribe from modern-day France. Their representatives had come to Rome, seeking relief from exploitation by Roman officials. Conspirators approached them, hoping they would support the rebellion. Instead, the Allobroges secretly informed Cicero. Working with Roman authorities, they collected letters, names, plans, and signatures. At a bridge outside Rome, messengers carrying these documents were arrested. The evidence was overwhelming. One conspirator's house was searched. Weapons were discovered. He absurdly claimed that collecting weapons was merely a hobby. Few were convinced. Using his emergency powers and supported by most senators, Cicero ordered the execution of 5 leading conspirators imprisoned in Rome. It remains one of the most controversial decisions of his career. Some praised him for saving the Republic. Others argued he had executed Roman citizens without trial. But events outside the city would soon make further debate unnecessary. Catiline's army had only weeks to survive. Early in 62 BCE, Roman legions finally confronted Catiline near Pistoria. Catiline knew escape was impossible. He addressed his soldiers, promised them glory, and prepared for battle. Ancient historians say he fought like a man who had already accepted death. He remained in the front ranks, encouraging his men, charging into enemy lines, refusing to retreat. When the battle ended, Catiline's army had been annihilated, and when soldiers searched the battlefield, they found Catiline's body far ahead of where his own troops had fallen, surrounded by enemy corpses, still clutching his weapons. Even his enemies admitted he died courageously. Back in Rome, celebrations erupted. Cicero was hailed as the savior of the Republic and was awarded one of the most prestigious honors imaginable, Pater Patriae, Father of the Fatherland. It seemed like a perfect ending. But Roman politics rarely offered perfect endings. The executions of the conspirators haunted Cicero for years. Political enemies accused him of acting illegally. In 58 BCE, he was forced into temporary exile. And 20 years after defeating Catiline, his fate turned tragic. In 43 BCE, during another civil war, Cicero was captured and executed on the orders of his enemies. His head and hands were displayed publicly in Rome. The Republic he had tried so desperately to save would disappear only a few years later. As for Catiline, history remembers him as a traitor, a revolutionary, or perhaps a desperate man destroyed by ambition.